What's going on, gamers? This is DBM Gamer here, and like a lot of you, when Zer brought the last word to the tower last week in his inventory, I jumped at the chance to buy this handgun. This is a handgun that I've wanted for a long time because it has a lot of history behind it. But before I can tell you all of the history and all the stories behind it, I have to get to my shoutouts. My shoutouts is how I show appreciation back to the community that has got me this far, and I want to give shoutouts to Dax Alexander, Dave McKee, Micah Aliberti, Andrew 61089, O Akio, It's So Dane, Brandon Zedek, AQ Worlds, Dennis Anveric, and Ryan Franklin. So as I said earlier, I have a lore video today about the last word and its owner, Jaren Ward. Now the last word itself appears to be made by a weapon manufacturer within the game known as Tex Machina. If you look very closely, you can even see it stamped right on the barrel. Now the actual last word perk is even the Tex Machina logo. That's a very nice tie-in. The flavor text on the last word reads, "Yours, not mine, Renegade Hunter Shinmao 4. Now there's a lot of stories surrounding the last word, and all of this occurs during the Dark Age. It's a time when humanity is still scattered after the attack of the darkness which ended the Golden Age. Now this is told from the point of view of an unnamed young boy. I'm writing this from memory. Some mine, but not all. The facts won't sync with the reality, but they'll be close. And there's no one to say otherwise. For all intents and purposes, this will be the history of a settlement we called Palamon, and the horrors that followed in an all too brief peace. I remember a home and stories of a paradise we'd all get to see someday, of a city, shining even in the night. Palamon didn't shine, but it was a sanctuary of a sort. We'd settled in the heart of the range that stretched the horizon, wooded mountains that shot with a purpose toward the sky. Winters were harsh, but the trees and the peaks hid us from the world. We talked about moving on, sometimes striking out for the city, but it was just a longing. Drifters came and went. On occasion they would stay, but rarely. We had no real government, but there was a rule of law, basic tenets agreed upon by all, eventually overseen by Magistrate Loken. Magistrate Loken is a name that I want you to remember, guys. Now, going forward, there you have it. No government. Until there was. I was young, so I barely understood. I remember Loken as a hard-working man who just became broken. Mostly I think he was sad and frightened. As his fingers tightened on Palamon, people left. There was who stayed, saw our days become gray. Loken's protection from the fallen, from ourselves, became a dictatorship. Looking back, I think maybe Loken had just lost too much of himself, his family, but everyone lost something, and some of us had nothing to begin with. My only memory of parents is a haze, like a daydream, and a small light like the spark of their souls. It's not anything I dwell on. They left me early, taken by dregs. Palamon raised me from there, a family I called my own, cared for as if I was their natural-born son, and life was good, being the only life I ever knew. My judgment was skewed, and it wasn't easy, pocked by loss, but I would call it good. Until, of course, it wasn't. Until two men entered my world. One a light, the other the darkest shadow I would ever know. The man I would come to know is Jaren Ward. My third father, and quite possibly my closest friend, came to Palamon from the south. I was just a boy, but I'll never forget his silhouette on an empty trail as he made a slow walk into town. I'd never seen anything like him, maybe none of us had. He'd said he was only passing through, and I believed him, still do. But life can get in the way of intent, and often does. I can picture the day with near perfect clarity of all the details, every nuance, every moment, the memory that sticks in my mind, the iron on Jaren's hip, a cannon that looked both pristine and lived in, like a relic of every battle he'd ever fought, hung low at his waist, a trophy and a warning. This man was dangerous, but there was a light about him, a pureness to his weight that seemed to hint his ire was something earned, not carelessly given. I'd be the first to see him as he approached, but soon most of Palamon had turned out to greet him. My father held me back as everyone stood in silence. Jaren didn't make a sound behind his sleek racer's helmet. He looked just like the heroes in the stories. And to this day, I'm not sure one way or the other if his silence between the townspeople and the adventurer was born of fear or respect. I'd like to think the latter, but any truth I try to place on the moment would be of my own making. As we waited for Magistrate Loken to arrive and make an official greeting, my patience got the best of me. I shook free of my father's heavy hand and made the short sprint across the court, stopping a few paces from where this new curiosity stood, a man unlike any other. I stared up at him as he lowered his attention on me, his eyes hidden behind the thick tinted visor of his headgear. My sight quickly fell to his sidearm. I was transfixed by it. I imagined all the places the weapon had been, all the wonders it had seen, and all the horrors it had endured. My imagination darted from one heroic act to the next. I barely registered when he began to kneel, holding out the iron as an offering, but my eyes locked onto the piece, mesmerized. I recall turning back to my father and seeing the looks on the faces of everyone I knew. There was worry there. My father was slowly shaking his head as if pleading with me to ignore the gift. I turned back to the man I will come to know as Jaren Ward, the finest hunter this system may ever know, and one of the greatest guardians to ever defend the Traveler's Light. And I took the weapon in my hand, carefully, gently, not to use, but to observe, to imagine, to feel its weight and to know its truth. That was the first time that I held the last word, but unfortunately, not the last. So why did Jaren Ward end up in Palamon? It's key to remember that during the Dark Age, there were no safe areas with the exception of where the Traveler lay dormant. The Titans were constructing the Great Wall, which saved the last city. So this was an area of refuge from all of the Fallen that were pirating the planet. So I would imagine that the consensus of governing bodies in the last city needed more people and resources. So they sent Guardians to the Wildlands to aid in this. Guardians who entered the Wildlands also were charged with keeping the peace, kind of like the Old West. So an event happened where Jaren Ward confronted the dictatorship of Magistrate Loken. Now once again, this is told from the point of view of the young boy at the beginning of this story. Loken's men found Jaren Ward in the courtyard where this all had began. 9 guns trained on him, 9 cold hearts awaiting the order. Magistrate Loken stood behind them, looking pleased with himself. Jaren Ward stood in silence, his ghost peeked out over his shoulder. Loken looked into the crowd before stepping forward as if to claim the ground, his ground. "You question me?" There was venom in his words. "This is not your home." I remember Loken's gesture here, making a show of it all. Everyone was still, quiet. I tugged at my father's sleeve, but he just tightened his grip on my shoulder to the point of pain. His way of letting me know this was not the time. I'd watched Jaren's every move over the past months, mapping his effortless gestures and slight earned mannerisms. I'd never seen anything like him. He was something I couldn't comprehend, and yet I felt I understood all I needed the moment I'd seen him. He was more than us, not better, not superior, just more. I wanted my father to stop what was happening. Looking back now, I realized that he didn't want it to stop. No one did. As Loken belittled Jaren Ward, taunted him, enumerated his crimes and his sins, my eyes were stuck on Jaren's pistol, fixed to his hip, his steady hand resting calmly on his belt. I remembered the pistol's weight, effortless, and my concern faded. I understood. "This is our town. My town," Loken shouted. He was going to make a show of Jaren, teach the people of Palamon a lesson in obedience. Jaren spoke clear, calm. "Not anymore." Loken laughed dismissively as he had 9 guns at his side. "Those gonna be your last words then, boy?" The movement was a flash, quick as chain lightning. Jaren Ward spoke as he moved. "Yours, not mine." Smoke trailed from Jaren's revolver. Loken hit the ground, a dark hole in his forehead, eyes staring into eternity. Jaren stared down the 9 guns trained on him. One by one they lowered their aim. And the rest of my life began, where in a few short years so many others would be ended. Now, I did a video in the first 2 weeks of Destiny where I told the story of Thorn. I believe once Bungie releases the whole story of Destiny, we will see that the Anakin Skywalker character that I talked about in that video is Jaren Ward. The last word is referred to as a romantic weapon in its flavor text, and during Dread Gnyor's transformation, he thought of his weapon as a rose, which is a symbol of romance. So is it possible that the last word transforms into Thorn? It's just a theory. It's also a possibility that the young boy that stuck with Jaren after the incident at Palamon was given the last word after Jaren possibly turns to Yor. A sadness also crept in and was the catalyst for the transformation to Dredgen Yor. Is killing Magistrate Loken this catalyst? It may be possible due to the young boy's last line where in a few short years, so many others' lives would be ended. Another indication of this is in the limited edition Arms and Armament book. If you look at Thorn, it says that there is no reference before Palamon. It also gives you the Path of the North Channel, Velour, Breaklands, and Durga, and says that Yor's trail goes cold at Durga. So who is Shin Malphur and why is his Renegade Hunter name on the last word? In my Thorn video, I had also thought that Shin Malphur may have been one of the people that Dredgen Yor killed. But another theory is, this young boy is Shin Malphur. He throws Jaren Ward's catchphrase at Dredgen Yor because he witnessed it. This would explain the "yours not mine" quote. Perhaps Shin is not a renegade hunter, but one who instead hunted a guardian who went bad. A hunter of a renegade, perhaps. It would explain why he said he held the last word more than once. This would also explain why the young boy refers to Jaren Ward as a father and two different men, one a light and the other the darkest shadow he would ever know. It's just a theory at this point, but what do you think? Alright guys, well if you like this type of content, just hit that like button or leave a comment, or if you want to see more, just hit that subscribe button. But as always guys, have a good one.